Hello, welcome to Thursday's ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the southeast. A whole life sentence for Wayne Couzens, the former police officer from Kent who strangled Sarah Everard. He will now die in prison.
There are no words that can fully express the fury and overwhelming sadness that we all feel about what happened to Sarah. I am so sorry.
The government's furlough scheme comes to an end. What now for workers and businesses, including the aviation industry?
Also tonight, we'll meet Jack and Zoe, how they represent an untapped pool of talent that employers should never ignore.
And tonight's Pride of Britain fundraiser, Phil Heckles and his pet portraits, raising thousands to help combat homelessness. Good evening. A Met police officer from Kent who strangled Sarah Everard with his police belt has been sentenced to whole life imprisonment, meaning he will die in jail.
Wayne Couzens from Deal kidnapped the marketing executive under the guise of a fake arrest before killing her and dumping her body in Woodland near Ashford.
Her parents clasped hands as the sentence was handed down, but today police face questions about whether warning signs were properly investigated. Sarah Saunders reports.
It was an abuse of power, a betrayal of trust. Former police officer Wayne Couzens used his warrant card and handcuffs to snatch Sarah Everard off the streets of London, before raping and strangling her and dumping her body in Woodland near Ashford. Today, he began a whole life sentence. The Metropolitan Police say they are sickened and angered by this crime and recognise a bond of trust has been broken.
Sarah's kidnap, rape and murder was one of the most dreadful events in the 190-year history of the Metropolitan Police Service. I am absolutely horrified that this man used his position of trust to deceive and coerce Sarah. And I know you all are too.
Sentencing Couzens, Lord Justice Fulford described the murder as grotesque. Sarah Everard was walking home when she was abducted from the streets of London. Her disappearance and murder triggered a massive police operation. Officers spent many days searching in Sandwich, where Couzens had driven to dispose of Sarah's mobile phone. In Couzens' car, found parked outside his home in Freeman's Way, officers found evidence, including a broken corner of Sarah Everard's SIM card, blood matching her profile, straps and gloves. During the two-day sentencing hearing, Sarah Everard's sister spoke of her anguish and horror. That Couzens was able to flit between what he did and normal, everyday actions. After the murder and disposal of Sarah's body, Couzens bought coffee and a cake in Dover. He called the family vet.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could book my dog in for the vet so I can have a discussion about issues, please. I work shift work, so let me think. But would it be possible the Friday the 12th, sometime after 3:30?
This call was made shortly after Couzens returned to the woods to burn Sarah's remains. Grief and anger has reverberated around the country. Today, questions remain about whether the police missed opportunities to stop Sarah Everard's killer, who allegedly exposed himself in the days before the abduction and had a reputation among fellow officers.
There are questions, serious questions, that will need to be answered by the Metropolitan Police around the conduct of the potential suspect at the time.
Wayne Couzens will spend his life in prison. Today, Sarah Everard's family said nothing can bring their daughter back, but knowing he will be imprisoned forever brings some relief. Sarah Saunders, ITV News.
The tragedy and awful pain for the Everard family is all too evident, sadly. But the evil that Wayne Couzens perpetrated spreads further, the damage and the reputation of the police. So how did this go so terribly wrong?
Well, let's talk now to Parm Sandhu from Sevenoaks, who's a former chief superintendent at the Metropolitan Police where Couzens worked. Parm Sandhu, you left the force and have been highly critical about the culture there. What do you feel has gone wrong in this case?
I think that this man, who happens to be a monster in uniform, was allowed to, first of all, join the Met from a nuclear policing team. And he passed the vetting procedures. He's then been allowed to carry on and go and carry a gun. This man was carrying a gun at work. So obviously there's been a failure with vetting procedures. I also feel that there's a failure in the culture of the Met, in the officers who had nicknamed him the rapist hadn't brought any allegations against him. And there's a fear and there's a blame culture. So as a female officer, I feel that maybe females aren't supported as much as they should be when they actually call somebody out. There's a fear and a culture that goes on which allows men to hide behind banter, hide behind sexist jokes, and then turn around and say, well, can you not take a joke? So there are issues there that really need to be looked at.
Now, there was an incident reported in 2015. He had a reputation. Do you feel there was a thorough investigation into his behaviour?
I feel that there have been failures because if this man had allegations made against him in 2015, which is what I believe happened, he then went on to apply to the Met in 2018 and was taken on as a police officer there. So there's been a failure there in the vetting and it should have been looked at. He should have been interviewed and spoken to about the previous allegations. But then he's gone on and he's continued with exposure type of offences and it wasn't dealt with, it wasn't looked at. If that had been done, perhaps, this tragic situation would have been avoided.
Now, there's no question that confidence in the police has been damaged. How can that confidence be rebuilt, do you think?
I think until we restore that safety, that feeling of confidence and trust in policing, I don't think that lone male officers should be arresting women in the street. They should be calling for marked police vehicles to transport those women. And as a woman, what I would say to any other woman is, if you feel uncomfortable, dial 999, refuse to get in that car and draw attention to yourself. Scream as loudly as you can, because if people can see what's going on, they're going to start getting interested, they're going to take photographs. And if that man is acting outside of the law, he's not going to stick around. Because what we've got to remember is the majority of police officers are good and they are there to help the communities.
Well, many women watching tonight may feel anxious about being out alone. What would you like to see being done to make women feel safer again?
We've got to make sure that either officers are patrolling in pairs. If officers are in unmarked vehicles and in plain clothes, that they call for backup, and that could be uniformed officers. We need to have more officers on the street. We need to have better lighting, but we actually need to have a vetting overhaul within the Met and across the country to make sure that the right people are doing the policing and looking after our communities.
Parm Sandhu, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
And you can find more on that story on our website. Just go to itv.com/Meridian.
A man from East Sussex has appeared at the Old Bailey accused of the murder of primary school teacher Sabina Nessa. Garage worker Kochi Salamaj from Eastbourne is accused of attacking the 28-year-old in Kidbrooke in London. He's told the court he will deny the charge. Today, police have been searching woodland near Tunbridge Wells.
Sussex Healthcare have confirmed that 6 of their care homes have now closed. The group decided to close the facilities in Horsham, East Grinstead and Uckfield following a series of damning reports by inspectors. The company told us that all residents have been transferred to new placements by the agreed deadline of today.
For 18 long months, the government's furlough scheme has been a lifeline, particularly for the aviation industry. Today, the support comes to an end.
Well, that's raised concerns about the future of jobs in towns like Crawley, which rely heavily on international travel. James Dunham has more.
At Gatwick today, the mood wasn't so blue as the airport's new airline to New York landed.
We bring more travel, but we also have business partners, people that we employ directly. So whether it's maintenance or ground handlers or caterers or cleaners, and then the people that we have here. So in terms of growth, it's great in terms of the effect airlines have on the local economy.
Local economies like Crawley, a town in the direct shadow of Gatwick, where thousands lost their jobs. The fear now, with furlough ending, as many as 13,000 positions linked to aviation could be at risk across our region as the travel industry slowly recovers. Looking around the airport today, it's certainly not deserted and things do feel fairly busy, but passenger numbers are around a quarter of what they were before the pandemic. Is there a prospect in 2-3 months' time people could lose their jobs?
I think our hope is that we've had a fantastic vaccination rollout here in the UK. So our hope and our planning at this stage is we're going to see a continued increase in the number of people travelling and hopefully no more restrictions.
It is hope. How much confidence is there?
I think we're as confident as we've felt since this began 18 months ago.
These airline workers are grateful to still have jobs.
You guys all think the furlough scheme should be extended for the aviation industry?
Yeah, yes. But as support ends, Mark Legg is having to take a pay cut as his hours reduce.
It is a significant loss in wages. Less money, more expenses, worse shifts, worse hours. The pressure on terms and conditions is happening at the same time as all of this uncertainty.
Bogdan Tokmalaya believes the end of furlough should also mean the end of travel restrictions.
In 5 years from now, in my opinion, my personal opinion, we're going to be the same, like 80-90% vaccination rate, which is a brilliant rate, and COVID's still here. So if nothing will change, we'll still have the same vaccination and the COVID will stay. Are we going to keep the same restrictions?
While Lee Bristow says the decision not to extend furlough brings more uncertainty.
It's that not knowing. We're good for another month, we're good for another 2 months. People don't know, the panic. I mean, the mental health that people I've seen, not knowing is dramatic.
People are struggling?
Oh God, yeah, very much so.
The government say aviation has been supported with a £12 billion package that includes loans and financing, support for exporters, flexibilities with tax bills and grants for research and development. Signs of growth here today, a boost, but without furlough, the industry faces a bumpy ride. James Dunham, ITV News.
Now, ministers have insisted the fuel crisis is moving in the right direction, with fewer petrol stations empty than there were at the start of the week.
Well, drivers in Sussex have been asked to fill up as normal to help the recovery, but at some rural garages in Kent, the pumps have now been dry for many days, as Kit Bradshaw will tell us.
The dawn chorus in East Sussex this morning was that of idling car engines. These motorists in Hailsham so desperate for fuel they were queuing up at opening time. But with stocks running low, the staff had to prioritise.
This woman has been queuing for that long that she's actually got zero fuel in her car. We have sort of like 500 litres left of unleaded, so we're now going to let her, because she's been queuing, we're now going to let her come in.
I run out of 3 days ago.
Really?
Yeah, I've literally been going on zero to try and get some.
At another rural filling station in the village of Batchild in Kent, the pumps were dry. They last had a tanker delivery here on Tuesday, which would normally tide them over for 4 days. Staff tell me it lasted just 7 hours. Down the road in Sittingbourne town centre, there were plenty of drivers eager to get their hands on the available unleaded and diesel. Although many garages now have fuel, this one only has 4 pumps in operation rather than the usual 6, is limiting transactions to £35, and in the middle of the afternoon there is a very big queue of vehicles waiting. Some of those running on empty have had to take themselves on foot to fill up.
I'm carrying this because I can't get enough petrol for my son's wheelchair adapted vehicle, petrol that we need to get him to university on Friday.
Ministers say more petrol was delivered to forecourts yesterday than was dispensed, with a government reserve fleet of tankers drafted in to help with deliveries. But the Sussex Resilience Forum has reiterated tonight that it's important that the public buy fuel as normal to allow time for the supply chain to catch up. Kit Bradshaw, ITV News, Sittingbourne.
Well, Logistics UK, who are the trade body for freight, say the lorry driver permit designed to help the fuel supply needs to be bigger in scope and last longer.
Well, Natalie Chapman's from Logistics UK in Tunbridge Wells. Natalie, I know you're welcoming this package of measures announced by the British government to ease the driver shortage. Is it enough? What more can be done?
Well, Logistics UK absolutely welcomes this package of measures that's been announced. We're currently working through the detail with government because whilst we've got these broad announcements, we need to understand how they will be delivered and in what timescales, because some of them we really need to come through quite urgently to help deal with the current crisis.
In an ideal world, how long should this permit scheme last for?
Well, when we were asking government to extend visas to enable HGV drivers to come into the UK, we've been calling for 6 months as a minimum. We think that's the reasonable amount of time that's needed in order to recruit and to train up additional HGV drivers. You know, you can't just take somebody off the street and put them into the cab of a truck the next day. It takes many months of training. What
are truckers saying to you about getting around? I mean, have you heard of hauliers running out of diesel?
Well, in general, most HGV companies will have bunkerage of fuel at their depots. So actually there's a fair amount of resilience within the supply chain in terms of petrol supplies. There will be some that have fuel cards and rely on public refuelling infrastructure. We're seeing that as more of a challenge in particular to some of the van operators and that side of things.
There are warnings the government need to better prepare for supplies in general, not just fuel, so that Christmas is not affected. What's your reaction briefly?
Well, I think what this has all shown is how critical logistics is to all of our everyday lives. We are a critical part of infrastructure and we need to be considered at the earliest possible opportunity. And what we also need to make sure is, you know, we had a terrible Christmas last year. I think the great British public deserve a really good Christmas. The logistics industry were working incredibly hard to make sure we can deliver it.
Fantastic news. Natalie Chapman, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, staying with fuel, and the UK's wholesale energy markets have reached record highs over the past few weeks. It means we could be facing some of the biggest winter fuel bills in years. Households are now looking at an average increase in their annual bills of £139.
Yes, reports suggest 500,000 people could be forced into fuel poverty by the price increases. Well, this evening's Tonight programme is looking at why energy prices are soaring and what you can do to keep costs down this winter. Kevin Ashford has more.
Energy costs are on the rise. Demand for gas around the world is increasing as economies recover from the pandemic. And the UK has less gas in storage than other countries in Europe. The cap on prices in the UK is set to be raised tomorrow, meaning bills for many will go up too. The Bashford family from East Sussex has 4 generations living under one roof. Their energy bill can reach £400 a month, a cost that's expected to rise.
There's so much cooking going on. We are constantly washing, we're constantly using the tumble dryer.
You know, we have to use the tumble dryer because there's so much washing to do.
We're obviously concerned as the winter months draw in because Nan is here. We have got to keep her warm, so we'll be cranking the heating up and we'll be seeing the bills go up too.
An estimated 3 million UK households are in fuel poverty, meaning they have little left to live on after paying their fuel bills. But it's not just the financial cost. Cold homes can have other consequences too.
The obvious examples are those living with asthma and COPD. They're more likely to suffer exacerbations of their conditions. Your risk of heart disease and strokes go up when your homes are colder. But also we see an increase in those presenting with mental health conditions, both in adults and in children. And cold homes are particularly dangerous for older people.
The government insists it wants to reduce dramatically the numbers living in fuel poverty and has set a target that all fuel-poor households should be living in an energy-efficient property by 2030. However, this winter looks set to be a tough one financially for many, with experts advising householders to conserve energy wherever possible. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Well, in the current economic climate, the search for staff has never been more urgent, and yet many employers don't consider candidates with disabilities, and that is 1 in 5 of the population.
But there's a lot of support available, both for potential employers and employees, so that they can find the perfect match, as Tony Green has been finding out.
Zoe O'Donnell loves her job working at a hotel. So much so, in an industry famous for a quick turnover in staff, she stayed here for 4 years. She has a learning difficulty, and for many people with disabilities, finding a job can be a challenge. Zoe's route to work was different.
There was a supported employment team what got me the job, and I had to do a 10-week work experience, just to give me a bit of confidence first to know if I could get a job. I really enjoy it, getting a bit of independence and getting out and about.
She's amazing, she looks the part, she's always very well presented, she cares, loves talking to customers, and I think customers love her talking to them.
Alicia Moyles works for the education people, helping anyone with a disability find paid, sustainable employment.
Lots of employers are really worried about employing people with disabilities, and some people with disabilities have very low aspirations. We have people with all sorts of abilities, some that have been untapped and people didn't realise they had those abilities. We don't want employers doing anybody any favours. We want the person to be a real asset to the employer.
Jack Biggs's skills secured an apprenticeship at this construction engineering company in Whitstable.
I've got ADHD and autism. I've had it since, well, I got diagnosed about 7. Going through college, I didn't think I'd be able to get a job like this. We done the Wembley Stadium, the changing rooms. I'm actually really proud of that. Just to say that all the England players have been using something I've made makes me a bit excited, happy. I'm not really good with all the paperwork sort of stuff. So that's why I wanted to do carpentry. It sort of suits me, my personality and stuff.
At the end of his work experience, we found that Jack had great knowledge of the industry and enthusiasm. So we were prepared to offer him an apprenticeship.
With 1 in 5 people having a disability, there's an untapped talent pool waiting for their chance to get to work. Tony Green, ITV News, Whitstable.
And all the best to them. Right, time now to meet another of our finalists for this year's Pride of Britain Awards. It started as a way to encourage his young son to make thank you cards.
You've all tried to do that, but Phil Heckle's quirky portraits of people's pets have become a fundraising phenomenon. He's already raised more than £100,000 to help the homeless, as Malcolm Shaw has been finding out.
Phil Heckle's pictures of pets certainly aren't the most accurate, but somehow they capture the character of their subjects. From photos posted on his Facebook page, Phil creates these charming portraits in a matter of minutes and asks only for donations in return.
I think that there's humour and people love their pets, and I think you put those two things together and I think people like it. Maybe it's just that it's a bit different. Maybe that it does make you smile. I'm still amazed at how many people are getting behind what we're doing. Yeah, it's crazy.
I've done bits and pieces while I was rough sleeping, but it's kind of hard to get a routine and
Sure, yeah.
everything else going to really do anything.
Yeah.
So far, Phil's raised over £100,000 to help tackle homelessness. Today he's meeting Ben, who spent 5 years sleeping rough, but he's back on track thanks to the charity Turning Tides.
Without enough funding, there's not always a bed for everybody that day, and to have that place to come in the meantime to keep warm, have something to eat, health checks, things like that, it's a real lifeline for people.
The more I've got involved with Turning Tides and met people like Ben, it kind of inspires you to keep going, because when you hear the stories and it becomes personal and you kind of see firsthand the work that these guys do, you can't help but want to continue to be involved with it, really.
The money Phil is generating helps Turning Tides fund its hostels, houses and community hubs.
It's actually showing what we're doing, so it's like a face to the charity.
as well as raising money. He's been a huge gift to us. But above all, it's a gift to the people who so rely on our services. Our clients feel stigmatised, feel unwanted, and actually they're ordinary human beings in the end.
Phil has no training in art. His flair came as a surprise to his family, who nominated him for this year's Pride of Britain.
That was all my mum. She wanted to nominate him just through all the efforts that he's done, the amount that he'd raised, everything that he's put into it. So she sneakily asked me and put his nomination in. It just shows what a lovely, generous, caring person he is. He's getting something to do something he absolutely loves and enjoys, but also helping bring such awareness to such a cause.
There's so many people that need to be thanked above me. So it's great, it's overwhelming, but it's also a little bit uncomfortable, if I'm honest.
Known online as Hercule van Wolfwinkle, Phil Heckles holds down a full-time job alongside his artwork, but he's determined to keep turning out his pet portraits to help the homeless. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Worthing.
Well, Phil's really clever, isn't he?
So
But
clever.
is he the winner? I don't know, but we'll reveal the finalist of the ITV Meridian Fundraiser of the Year out of our 4 nominees tomorrow. Whatever you do, don't miss it.
Now, Pip's with us in the studio. Pip, lovely to have you actually in here with us.
So lovely to be back here.
You've got some weather law for us.
I have indeed. No, it's very hard to follow that Pride of Britain, isn't it?
You can
But
do it.
I'll try. I'll try.
Yes, go
Okay, so a
on.
bit of weather law. Famously, that phrase, red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning. It's what we had this morning. It's when we start with lovely red skies and it then all goes downhill. Let's take a look at our first picture. Now, this one comes from Lawrence Davies in Ramsgate. Now, a red sky in the morning happens when we have high pressure moving away eastwards. That high pressure traps lots of particles in the lower layers of the atmosphere. These particles then scatter the rays of the rising sun and we're left with a red-orange glow. This is a great example from Kerry Baker in Broadstairs. The rising sun illuminating the incoming cloud. It really is, isn't it? But we'll round it off with probably one of the reddest skies I've seen. This is from Eric Whittle in Dover. Some seriously impressive colour there.
I'm slightly worried. Shepherd's warning. Is this a sort of precursor to warning us about some dodgy weather coming up?
Sound good.
Oh, there's definitely some dodgy weather on the way. Saturday in particular set to bring a real spell of wet and windy weather. The potential for coastal gales. No warnings in force at the moment, but I suspect we could see some. We will, of course, keep you posted.
Where's it all coming from then?
Coming from the west, Fred. Yeah, as it usually is. Yeah, marching in.
It's all their fault.
Lovely, Philippa. Thanks so much. OK, it's not going to be good, but Pip will do it with a smile. You'll still feel happy at the end of this forecast. Possibly. Here she is.
Great Western Railway sponsors the ITV Meridian weather.
So all looking decidedly unsettled and autumnal over the next few days. Showers or longer spells of rain and with it pretty windy at times as well. Out at the moment, still a few showers on the scene, and through the course of tonight it remains rather showery, rather cloudy and rather breezy. But with all of that, it will be much milder than last night. Last night, 1 or 2 spots got as low as 2 or 3 Celsius. Tonight, I think for just about all of us, we'll be staying up in double figures. So a mild and fairly showery start initially tomorrow. It won't be long before we see a band of more persistent rain sweeping its way eastwards, clearing those showers out of the way. Behind it, a few more showers to follow initially, but some sunshine to be found as the day wears on as well. Now, temperature-wise, it will be on a par with today, 16 or 17 Celsius the high, and with the winds easing down a little into the afternoon and a bit more sunshine coming through, it should feel a little more pleasant. Any lingering showers will tend to fade through tomorrow afternoon, and overnight into Saturday, it remains fairly quiet. But you'll notice by lunchtime on Saturday, a great swathe of rain starting to move in from the southwest. That will head our way through Saturday afternoon, and it will be a fairly unsettled picture beyond that too. Do take very good care. Bye-bye.
Great Western Railway sponsors the ITV Meridian weather.
It's not looking good, is it?
Pretty grim, isn't it?
And in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Stacey's got our late news just after 10:30. Join her if you will. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks for watching. Take care. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Good night.